Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I was camping in Colorado once with a group of friends. There were about 6 of us. We set up camp in a sweet rock outcrop where there were 3 large boulders leaning against each other with a hole at the top and enough room to sit underneath. This was during a fire ban, so it was the perfect place to put our campfire, so we set up the tent not far off. Middle of the night comes and we are running out of firewood. We remember a campsite nearby that had nobody there during the day and plenty of wood, but we had been hearing voices all evening. Just talking, nothing strange, and assumed it was that nearby campsite. So we walked over to ask if we could borrow some wood and chop some more to return it the next morning. The campsite was still completely empty at night. There was a Jeep there, and we figured the campers may have gotten stuck while four-wheeling during the day and were sleeping in their vehicle. So we grabbed some firewood with the intent to replace it in the morning and walked back to camp. There were no other campsites we saw nearby when hiking earlier in the day, so we were discussing on the way back where the voices talking were coming from, but figured we just missed another nearby camp. Anyway, we are back at camp and winding down, me and one buddy taking shifts keeping the fire going and chatting a little and dozing off, and the rest of our group had headed to the tent and started sleeping. And we started hearing what we figured were coyotes or foxes. They can make weird guttural screams that sound like people. But we kept hearing footsteps around the camp and going out of our cave to check, make sure no coyotes were in camp, and never saw anything. Weird screaming persisted all night. Next day comes around and we replace the wood at the empty nearby campsite, pack up, and get ready to leave after a morning hike. It was a difficult 4-wheel trail to get out, and one of my buddies got stuck on an incline and slid back. We started trying to dig him out, and I, being at the top of the incline but in a vehicle that wouldn't help, drove up the trail to find nearby campsites and see if someone had a rig with a winch that would go quicker. I approached probably 15 campsites along the trails over a couple hours, every one of them completely empty and abandoned. The entire area had no human life. Generators, trucks, jeeps all just left at the campsite in the middle of the day. No luck, so I went back to the site. My buddy was stuck and we got him dug out in the middle of the afternoon and started to leave. The entire area on the way out was completely abandoned, tons of camps near the trailhead and literally nobody at any campsite. It became really eerie and we were trying to figure out if what we had heard the night before was actual coyotes or what. Anyway, a few days later some bodies appeared in the area in the local news. Said they had died from unknown causes. There were about 4 over the entire area we were camping. No idea if the screams we heard were people or not, and no idea where the talking was coming from to this day. Not super scary, but eerie enough.
Abnormal from the start. There used to be a lot of mining in the area. I figured it fell into one too many trail piles. So, I was sitting in my tree stand like a true fat ass, skinny, but whatever, deer hunting. It was getting late, and probably past the legal quitting time, but I was hoping that I might see something before it got too dark. I had a Winchester Model 70 in .270. I hated that gun. Its back sight was folding, and tended to fold down when I needed it most. That does not factor into this story, it's just annoying. Caused me to miss a nice deer once. Location is northern Wisconsin, near the Upper Peninsula border. I am on my uncle's land, and my tree stand is overlooking a small pond that is currently frosted over. The ice is thick. We had run a 4x4 on it a few weeks ago, and it had not warmed up since. Night is falling, and as I think about a warm Irish coffee waiting for me back in the cabin, the bushes start to rustle. I tense up, hoping it's a deer, though hauling it out at this time and in the cold would suck. Out of the bushes stumbles this coyote. It was the biggest coyote I had ever seen, not as big as a wolf, but large German shepherd sized. Not bulky though. Skinny and long, really long. It looks at me, right at me, and screams. The scream nearly set my ears ringing, it was so loud. The sound was metallic, like in the movies when a sub goes too deep, that metal bending and tearing sound. Not organic at all. I had already planned to kill it. It was late enough that I knew I would not be able to get a deer, and coyotes are a massive issue for my uncle, as they kill his chickens and sheep. As I began to place the crosshairs on them, it fell over onto its side, and screamed again. The ice cracked when it fell and hit the ice, a loud bang, as the crack spread. I felt the tree shake. In the north, When serious ice cracks, it can cause minor earthquakes, break windows, and drop shelves. This ice was not that thick, but I still felt the tree move. The coyote was on its side twitching and gyrating. It then started to move onto its belly, and it got up on its hind legs. It looked right at me and screamed. My ears were ringing after that last one, but I don't think I heard any wildlife. I feel like I did not, but that might be my memories being edited by these threads. It stood on its back legs for a second or two, then fell forwards, onto its front legs. It then got up again, and took a few unsteady steps towards me. It was awkward, like if you were trying to get your dog to dance, or teaching a cat to walk on its back legs. It kind of stabilized itself, and began walking towards me, hissing like a radio. At that point, I was a little weirded out, but I thought it might have rabies or mad cow or something, so I placed my crosshairs on its head, and squeezed the trigger. Its head was split open by the 180 grain soft point, and it dropped. The shot was a little high, but it was pink misted, a fact I could see on the snow around it. I figured that was that, and started to climb down from the stand when it screamed again. I flew up the steps I had descended, and placed another bead on it. This one went into its throat, and it fell. I placed a third round into its chest for good measure, and slowly walked down. As I got closer, and my ears recovered, it was still hissing and trying to move. I raised my rifle, but it died before I placed a fourth round. Looking closer, it was all kinds of screwed up. It had the thin, almost needle-like teeth in the front, but its back teeth were shovel-like and flat, with really thin edges. Sharp. Its front paws hand thing, elongated toes, with sharp claws, while its back feet were long, wide, and flat. Snout was much longer than a normal coyote, maybe 1.5 times as long, and its eyes were much larger. I told my family, and we took a hunk of spine that was exposed to send to the Department of Natural Resources. They tested it, and it came back negative for all common diseases. Don't know what it was, probably a mutated coyote that bred with a dog or something, but it was strange. Glad it's dead, that's for sure. It's the strangest thing I have seen in these North Woods.
B14, Tennessee. I have a grandfather who lives out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by woods that are thick. Visit him every month or so. Have to lock up all the doors at night because he's paranoid, including the one outside to the garage. It'll probably help to give you guys an idea of how this part of the house is set up. There's a patio that encircles the entire house, like 4 foot wide, but wider and thicker in front of the kitchen. Most of the back wall in the kitchen is a set of sliding glass doors. Patio in front of them connects to the garage, and by extension, the garage door. If you keep going to the right from there, you get to the back porch. If anyone wants more elaboration, just ask. But that's really all that's important. Like I said, all the doors have to be locked at night. My brother and I went out through the kitchen to lock the garage. We lock it, he walks over to the back porch to piss. Hear movement in the woods. Assume it's a bobcat we've been seeing and hearing for a while. We get really quiet to see if we can spot it. Trees are literally pitch black. I can't see shit, Captain. The sound has completely stopped. Hear this ungodly screech 100-ish yards out in the forest. We nope back inside. Back up there, don't remember the time difference. Maybe a month later. After dinner. Grandfather has retired to the living room. Mom and sister are cleaning up. Brother and I are wandering around and being generally useless. Look out the sliding glass door. See this pale face that's almost human but not quite at the edge of the tree line. I can't see anything else. Holy heck. JPEG. Freak the hell out. Brother looks and sees it too right as it disappears. Mom and sister look at me instead of outside, don't see it. I distinctly remember this next one was 2 months after that last one. Watching TV after everyone else has gone to bed. Decide to get something to drink. Go into the kitchen, see face again, same place. Freeze and go silent as it disappears. Run upstairs to the bedroom. Didn't turn off the TV or get my drink. Be this may. Go back up to grandfather's. Being a layabout. I realized I left my headphones in the car. Walk over to the kitchen to go out to car. There it is. It's standing about halfway between the house and the tree line, clearly visible in the porch light. On all fours. Body is the same color as the face. It stands up really awkwardly, like it's not quite sure how. Nope.gif.jpeg.png.webm. I watch it turn back towards the woods. All of a sudden it's gone. Don't sleep all night. Keep hearing that screech way far off in the woods. Also hear occasional thumps downstairs and catch whiffs of a coppery scent. Too much of a coward to go outside or look out the window. I haven't seen it since.
Probably like 18. Me, my sister, and 3 male friends of mine decide we want to go to this abandoned mental institution on Long Island for some creepiness and urbex. Lash a flashlight to a stickball bat to have protection from any manner of assailant, be they mortal or corporeal. Live in Queens, so the 5 of us have to take the Long Island Expressway to get out there. On the highway, Highway to Hell, by AC/DC comes on, too spooky but not enough to deter us. Get lost for hours, ask 2 Li Hicks at a gas station to give us directions, finally find the place. Have to drive through this eerie backwoods road to get there, forest on both sides of the road uncomfortably close. All of a sudden you pop out of the forest on this wide road separated by a central sidewalk. All there is a tiny decrepit fire department, some kind of residence. Possibly for the elderly, and It was the creepiest looking building I've ever seen, maybe 6 stories high and old. Kings Park is the name of the place. So we cruise past the decrepit old hospital and pull into that residence home I mentioned, put just into the parking lot to park. My friends exit and stretch while I gather my shit. Go around the car to get stickball bat contraption, place the key in the trunk keyhole, turn. Car alarm starts going off like crazy. This has happened to me before with this shitty old Infiniti, but the noise is bound to call attention to us, and we're right beside the residence. Put the key back in the ignition because that's the only way to stop the alarm. What are you doing here? Nope. Avi. Look down the parking lot through the thick-ass fog and there's this old lady just on the edge of vision near the residence home. Just having car trouble, she probably knows what we're up to. Creepy old lady starts advancing toward our car. Sister and friends pile in as I mess with the ignition, the key refuses to stop the alarm. All of a sudden it works, the alarm stops, I start the car and boogie on out of there. And that's the story of how I never went to that old abandoned mental institution.
Always hear noises like gunshots and loud cracks when falling asleep. Make me jump bad, but fall asleep eventually. Be in a rented house at uni. Noises haven't happened for a few days. Wake up and lay in bed before rolling onto my back and trying to sleep again. Hear a scream. Scream is like nothing I have ever heard before, like somebody is screaming at the top of their lungs. Humans can directionalize sound pretty well. Every instinct tells me that this sound came from about 10 centimeters in front of my face. Like somebody was over me in the bed screaming. Instinctively start hitting and pushing it away. Nothing there. Screaming doesn't stop. Carries on for a full 20 seconds. I'm almost sobbing, have curled into a ball in the corner of my bed with my hands over my ears. For a few seconds I can hear it despite having my ears covered. It stops. Never been so scared in my life. Since that morning I've been getting the random cracks and gunshot noises while awake, instead of in bed. Hear it walking down the street or sitting at a table. People think I'm a spaz, because I flinch at noises they don't hear. Happens for a few months. Walking down the road and hearing what sounds like a gunshot next to my head. Literally jump away from it. Into oncoming traffic. Avoid getting full-on hit by a car as it swerves and brakes and clips me with its wing mirror. Still happens all the time. Started to think I was schizo for a while.
Okay guys, this happened a long time ago, so I'll try. They may be like 10 or 12. Sleep.jpg. 2 or 3 in the morning. Wake up to take a piss. Got the unusual habit of looking out the window in the night. When I look out the window, there's the parking lot and the gate of the residential and the gatekeeper. Look at the cars.jpg. When I see a creepy silhouette beneath a car, like he was hiding something or someone. At first I thought that he was the lover of some old woman in the neighborhood or worse, a thief. I see what he'll do. GIF. I spent 30 minutes watching the guy and he did not move more than a meter or 2. Wanted to see what the guy was going to do, but at least one sound would frighten him. Wait. Then the shit goes weird. The guy started to move up and down like he was lost, making some noise that even from my room I could hear. But the question is why the gatekeeper didn't hear it being so near the cars. I kept watching him when I laid down in the window, making a big crack sound. I'm so dead. JPEG. He stared at me and I tried to hide, but when I looked again he was still looking at my window. Indeed, I'm so dead. JPEG. He freezes and stands still beneath the car. I noticed he was pitch black, like he was wearing a black latex full costume. The light was on him, as still as a statue, no eyes, no mouth, very skinny, staring at me for 2 minutes more. Then he ran up my neighborhood a few houses more. My neighborhood is like a little hill. I panicked because my house door is in the same way he ran, took a knife from my previous dinner in my room and a Bible, very Christian at the time. I closed and locked every room in my house and just waited. After leaving my room and checking the other ones, I go to the living room to check the door. Fine, lock, safe, and nobody seems to be inside of the house. That was close. JPEG. Then, sure of myself, I disposed to take a look at the windows. Window number 1. Okay. Window number 2. Holy shit. When I approached my second window, he punched it like he was trying to break through the window. I backed up and took my knife full of courage and piss, grabbed my Bible and hit the window with it, hoping something holy happens. Didn't work as expected. JPEG. My second chance was to falcon punch my window with a knife, grab my courage back from the floor, took the knife and stabbed the window with it. I hope it works. GIF. I assumed the guy backed up because I didn't hear any other noise in and outside my house. I spent the whole night looking at my TV with my good old knife and Bible, then I fall asleep. The next day I asked my mother and my grandma if they didn't hear any weird noise. No, they said, must be a nightmare, said my mom. Even later in the day I asked the gatekeeper if he didn't hear or see anything weird by that time, and he told me he didn't see anything at that time. I obviously refused to think that it was a nightmare. I woke up at the same hour the next night, and to my big surprise he wasn't there. I looked at all the parking lot, even the gatekeeper was walking around. Nothing happened that night, same as the next one. I tried to forget it by the time, but a few years later I remembered about it and I kept quiet all this time. Not even my family believes me a part of my great-grandma. For the others I'm a fool. Trying to accept the idea that it was all a nightmare, that I fell asleep on the couch and it was all a dream, but I always refused to think that it was a nightmare. But why I was the only one who heard it, why I was the only one who saw it. I asked my great-grandma what was all about. Obviously being an old Latin woman, she told me it was a demon trying to get a man or woman to possess, that I was in danger of getting possessed, that's why only I knew it happened. I don't believe in that crap. What was that shit? What was all about?
Told this before, will tell again. Freshman in college. My cousin also goes to the same school. He has a girlfriend who told us one night after drinks that her house is possessed by a demon or something. All of us laugh and call immediate bullshit, assume overactive imaginings of drunk dumb girl. She says we can go to her house the next night to see proof. The next day we arrived, 4 of us, 2 men, 2 women. Her parents were staying out of town. The house was nice, like a newly built McMansion in development. As soon as we arrive, notice all lights are on, even push lights in closets. I think this is weird given that her parents have been gone for at least a night now and wouldn't leave lights on. She asks if we want a beer. We do. Go into the kitchen. Refrigerator door is open, all the cabinets are open. Immediate feelings of unease all around, but rationalize that she had someone do this to freak us. She goes out to the garage, which is connected to kitchen, to get beers from a fridge out there. After she comes back she starts closing all drawers and cabinets, etc., leaves the fridge open. The face when I realize they have to keep their food in the garage because the fridge and cabinets always open themselves whenever nobody is in kitchen. See broken plate on ground, start to pick it up, but she gives me a firm no, stating that it'd just break another one, leave it. We all are uneasy now. The house is cold, big and empty, aside from us. She shows us a freaking butcher knife that is stuck in the wall in the dining room, takes it out, puts it on the table. Says she has some scratches under one of her windows, could be spoopy. Do we want to check it out? Go upstairs, look at some mediocre scratches under her window. Go back downstairs, knife is back in the wall, all the cabinets open again. At this point we've had a few beers, we're feeling uneasy but loving it, sort of. This time she drops a bomb, saying that the basement is the epicenter of this activity and nobody has been able to go down past midnight. Can't make it past the 6th step. Immediate acceptance of the challenge. Too chicken shit to attempt alone, so cousin and I will do it together, side by side. As we open the basement door, an immediate burst of cool, fresh air comes rushing up at us from the darkness, enough to blow hair back. First step, nothing. The second step, starting to feel oppressive, I think is the word, like a pressure pushing us back. Looking into the dark, it almost seemed to get darker. Third step, a light hanging from a cord down in the basement clicks on, that's all. Silence. We remain on this step for a few minutes, debating on continuing, starting to become immensely scared. Fourth step, the light begins to swing in circles, like someone is swinging it around. Fifth step, grinding sounds coming from the back of the basement, like metal on concrete. Sixth step. The step. We are fully brick shitting at this moment. A loud bang as a paint can come sailing from the dark, smashes into the wall in front of us, paint everywhere. At this point we want to touch step 7 and go, as fast as we can, but as we are pushing our feet down towards the steps, it was as if an air pocket or something was sitting on the step. It was like pressing your feet down into jello or something. At this point I yelled something to the effect of, "Hey, you can't stop us from touching this step." At that moment the proverbial rug was pulled out from under us as the air pocket collapsed. We slam our feet into the steps with such force we both went down, taking each other with us. Sliding down steps towards the bottom, almost could say was being pulled. Scrambling to get up, cousin yells out in pain. As we get near the top, both of us say that we heard our names growling at us from the basement. Cousin has large scratches on his back, almost animalistic. We all freak out as soon as we cross the steps, slam the door shut and sort of freeze. All terrified, loud footsteps run up steps and slam into the door. We freak out. This is the nope moment for me, all run out of the house and just leave. Cousin ends up breaking up with this girl after this. We all sort of had mini breakdowns. The girl's house burnt down about a month later. Her parents got investigated for burning their own house down because the cause of ignition was that the gas line had been pulled away from a water heater in the basement. True shit, changed my life and those involved.
It happened back in August 1998. We were camping in some woods off of Middle Run Road in Fairmount City, Pennsylvania. The area we were in was isolated. Back then it was a path off of a logging road. We set up camp and got our fire going. We felt spooked, like we were being watched. But we played that off to being in the woods. Everything was fine that night, so we planned on staying Saturday night, too. We still felt spooked that night. When it started to turn daylight, we heard a lot of cracking and snapping sounds. We were in the tent, so we just stayed put, being really quiet. I was laying at the side of the tent, my head against the tent side. When these things came to the site, they were talking back and forth. It sounded like little animals chattering back and forth. They got quiet and we thought they were gone. When I moved my pillow and pushed it harder against the tent, something smacked the tent right above my head and took off back into the woods. Of course we were terrified, but we thought that it was a person trying to scare us. At this time my husband and I weren't married yet, and we just really wanted to spend time together. So we went back to the spot to camp the next weekend. But we brought friends. One of his friends brought a .22 with them. We pulled into the camping spot again. For this to make sense, I need to describe the area we pulled into. One side was a 20-foot cliff down onto the ground. The other side was a thick line of pine trees. Behind the trees is a field, then more woods. We were unloading and my friend said they felt like we were being watched. I said I always feel like that, it's creepy in these woods. They didn't know about the previous events. Everyone was at the trunk getting ready to move everything down the hill, and a huge black shadow came out behind us and ran straight off the cliff. Everyone was so scared, we jumped back into the car and left for a while. We knew we had to go back or go home. So we went back before it got too dark to set up the tent. After a while, everyone started to relax and have fun. When it got dark, someone thought they saw someone digging in the car. The guys went up, and that same huge shadow took off again. Most of us were too scared to go back up to the car. I look back on that and wonder why. Haha, the tent was not a safe place. We all went to sleep in the tent. That's when we heard that same chattering between the things again. The friend that brought the gun unzipped the tent a little bit and fired the gun. Nothing ran, but it got quiet. After a few minutes, the creatures were talking again. He yelled, "We're going to fire at you if you don't leave us alone." Whatever it was left out a scary roar growl noise, and the other thing chattered louder. We fired the gun and ran like hell to the car. We left and slept in the car. When we went back in the morning, the food was left untouched. The tent area with the sleeping bags was ransacked. We left everything, the tent, the sleeping bags, the food, and never went back to collect it. There is some kind of creature in those woods.
My story takes place back in the winter of 2009. I was 15 years old at the time. There were these woods by my house that my friends and I used to spend a lot of time in. These woods were massive. If you didn't know your way around, it would be easy to get lost in them. But it was at this point in my teen years, when most of my friends lost interest in spending time in the woods. But I, on the other hand, always enjoyed being in nature. And as a result, I was spending a lot of time by myself in these woods. If I remember correctly, it was a cold and dreary day in February. I was walking through the woods, listening to my MP3 player and smoking a cigarette. But then out of nowhere, I noticed something moving around in the distance. At first I thought it was maybe a deer or some sort of animal. But then as I took a closer look, I noticed it wasn't an animal, it was a person. Now one thing I should mention is, these woods were well known for being isolated and vastly empty, void of all humans. Aside from my friends and I, not once did I ever encounter another human being in the area. Instead of running away, turning around, or walking in the opposite direction for whatever reason, I wasn't afraid, and decided to approach this random mysterious person. I took off my headphones and shouted, "Hey you!" What would happen next would shock me to the core. I came face to face with the creepiest old lady I've ever seen in my life. She had thick, wild, and frizzy gray hair. She was wearing what looked like a brown coat, along with a dark blue dress underneath. And along with that, she was wearing what looked like sandals. The weather outside was far too cold for sandals. I immediately got a bad vibe from her. I took a few steps back. Nervously, for whatever reason, I said, "Oh hey, I was just passing through." I honestly didn't know what else to say. This lady had the most frightening face I've ever seen. I'm not trying to sound mean, but she looked like some sort of demon. Her eyes were wide open and bulging out of her head. She looked like she was high on meth or something. She then began aggressively sprinting towards me and yelling in a somewhat creature-like manner. For an old lady, she certainly had some impressive running abilities. I began running as fast as I possibly could in the opposite direction. But surprisingly, she managed to keep up with me. And trust me, at age 15, I was a super fast runner. Then, for whatever reason, I randomly decided to climb up a tree, in order to get away from her. I climbed up the tree as high as I possibly could. Down below, this creepy old lady attempted to climb up the tree, but failed to do so. I screamed at her, saying things like, "What do you want? Leave me alone." I really didn't know what to do. Me and this old lady proceeded to stare at each other for about an hour. She had a terrifying look in her eyes, as if she was possessed. I'll never forget that look. She looked like she wanted to kill me. She kept making strange sounds, and I noticed that most of her teeth looked rotten, and many were missing. But then, out of nowhere, there was a noise in some nearby bushes, and she went aggressively running towards it. Her behavior was almost zombie-like. But this gave me a chance to run away. I climbed down out of the tree, ran as fast as I could out of the woods, and returned home. The next day, I told my friends about what had happened, but they didn't believe me. We went searching for the lady, but couldn't find her. What baffled me was what was an old lady doing in the middle of the woods? Where did she come from? Why was she running after me? What happened to her? To this day, there are still so many unanswered questions. But even till this very day, I can still see her face in my mind. Her face actually haunts me. And that encounter is what created my fear of creepy old ladies.
This happened while I was doing my army service in Switzerland in the Alps. I am not allowed to talk about what we were doing, but I'll try to keep things clear. My company had installed a huge antenna and it had to be guarded by 2 soldiers day and night. We were on top of a hill, far away from any city and near a huge forest. It was 1800 hours and I had just started my watch of 6 hours with another soldier. Everything went fine, we smoked cigarettes and kept ourselves occupied until our watch ended at midnight. Then, we received a call from our superior and he told us that one of the soldiers that was supposed to take the watch couldn't come and one of us had to stay for another watch of 6 hours. We tossed a coin to know who will stay from midnight to 6 in the morning with temperatures of -20°C. Of course I lost and I had to wait for the other soldier to come and join me for the night watch. They sent another soldier, but not the best because I knew he would sleep all night when I saw him climbing the hill with his sleeping bag. And that's what he did. He immediately took place in the tent and fell asleep. It was the coldest and longest night of my life, but nothing special about it. The weird part happened in the morning. We received another call from our superior and he told us that we had an NBC exercise. It means that we have to wear all day long our anti-chemical suit. I don't know the English word for it, the one with a gas mask and everything that goes with it. I was really upset and exhausted because I wasn't able to sleep with that thing on and sleep was my only reward for that 12-hour watch. Well, I got out of the tent and this is where I saw something that still scares me to this day. There was a woman standing next to the antenna and she wasn't moving. She was just standing there, 5 meters from the tent. I couldn't see her face because of the sun starting to rise behind her. I knew she was a woman because she had really long hair and she had curves. Remember that we were in the middle of nowhere and this lady was standing there, not moving like she was frozen. I started to freak out and I called the other guy to show him what I was looking at. I don't know why, but he wasn't scared at all and he told her to leave because she wasn't allowed there. But she didn't make a move. She just stood there looking at us, or at least in our direction. I was so confused, how a woman could ignore 2 soldiers telling her to leave a forbidden area. I mean, we are in Switzerland, the army is not that impressive, I know, but people usually don't do this kind of thing. They would just move away, especially when it's 6 in the morning. And what was she doing in the middle of nowhere, obviously not dressed for this cold weather? How long was she standing there and how did she end up here? I didn't hear any footsteps. So many questions went through my mind at that moment. The other soldier didn't think twice and started walking towards her. When he almost reached her, she started running very fast. She ran directly into the forest. I saw her getting deep down in the forest and she disappeared from our sight. I'm really a rational thinker, I question everything and think that there is always an explanation. For me, the explanation is that she was simply a jogger because of the way she ran to the forest. But, almost 3 minutes had passed between the first time I saw her and the moment she started running away. 3 minutes of not moving at all, looking at me, dressed with something really tight with -20 degrees and in the middle of nowhere. Thank God there was someone with me because nobody would have believed me.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.